In this daily drop, I'm going to be talking about YouTube's new guidelines for creators when it comes to using generative AI and AI in general on channels. So let's go. Okay, everybody, it is Thursday's episode, shooting this on Wednesday and just about 20 minutes away from the weekly live stream. And I wanted to talk about a change that's happening with YouTube for anybody that is publishing content on the platform. And that has to do with AI. And I'll give you some of my initial thoughts. But first, before I do that, I just want to talk about what the guidelines are. And one of the great things about using a teleprompter as your device when you're using a setup like me is I actually have the bullet list of the things that are and are not going to be flagged, at least right now, when it comes to AI-based content. But this is, in theory, a self-policing mechanism, though there is also going to be the standard YouTube bots looking for things that are AI-based. So let me read this. The first thing you should be checking if it's part of your content is if your content has a synthetic version of a real person's voice as narration. The second bullet is replaced or altered faces. The third is manipulated footage of real events or locations. The fourth is prominent labeling for sensitive topics. So that last one to me is a little gray and isn't necessarily as straightforward in terms of AI-based content. But essentially what's happening here, which it should be, is the content creator themselves has to essentially state, just like we state now, whether or not footage or content is suitable for children or targeted to that if you're using generative AI tools in general, and things are realistic in the way that they look, in the way that they sound, but they weren't actually generated in the real world, then you have to check the box. And I think that's correct. Again, maybe somebody can chime in. I don't really know what prominent labeling for sensitive topics means. I think if you have a very sensitive topic, which is within a certain, category, then maybe you have to label it that way. It's the one in that initial list that, again, to me is a little bit gray. Then the second bullet list that I'm going to read has to do with things that aren't necessarily going to be looked for when you're using AI tools. So the first one is AI tools assisting with script writing or brainstorming. You would not need to check the box for that. Automatically generated captions. Third one is clearly unrealistic content. So, for example, fantastical animations. That's the example in the list. And then the last one is minor special effects and standard color or lighting adjustments, which also makes sense to me in terms of something that you wouldn't check that box. My thoughts on this are we are responsible as content creators for the content that we create. It is our responsibility. I am happy that Alphabet, Google, YouTube is taking this initiative. They also are a company that is heavily invested in and creates tools for AI and generative AI. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. It's not saying don't use those tools, don't create content using that technology, but it is saying be responsible for it. It's, in my mind, predominantly a self-policing mechanism at this point, though again, it states very explicitly in writing if you are not tagging stuff within that first four things in that bullet list. Again, a synthetic version of a real person's voice as narration, replaced or altered faces, manipulated footage of real events or locations. Obviously, the ramifications of that can be enormous for those first three, especially in things like healthcare and politics and stuff like that. And then the fourth being prominent labeling for sensitive topics. Hopefully there's a thing in there where you can actually do that as opposed to having to be in a timeline and then add that. So I'll look into that a little bit more, but would love to hear your thoughts on this addition to YouTube and to a creator's responsibility for the content that they're publishing. I don't think it's a step in the wrong direction. I think it's something that we do need to have as part of this as we go forward, because more and more and more content will be generated using AI, and especially generative AI. And I fully expect in the nearest future that we're going to have creators who aren't setting up cameras, they're not setting up lights, they're going to be completely generated in an AI sense, and they are for sure going to have to check that box when they're creating content. That's what I got for you. Don't forget to, and I'll see you on the next episode of The Daily Drop.